Everyone in my family remembers that night the same way. They tell the story with confidence, like it is settled fact. They repeat it at family dinners. They laugh lightly. They look at me with concern when I say that is not how it happened. My name is Alara Quinn, and I was there that night. I lived it. But according to my family, my memory is wrong. My mother says I was never scared. My father says nothing bad happened. My brother says I have always been too emotional. My sister stays quiet and looks away. They all agree on one version. I am the only one who does not. For years I believed something was wrong with me. I told myself maybe I mixed things up. Maybe fear changed my memory. When everyone around you agrees, doubt feels louder than truth. But what they do not know is this. I found proof. And once I saw it, I understood something that changed everything. They did not forget that night. They chose to remember it differently. Before we go any further, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. Because stories like this are more common than we think. I am 32 years old now, living a quiet life that looks normal from the outside. I work, I pay bills, I smile in photos. But every time my family gets together, that same night finds its way back into the room. It always starts casually. Someone mentions the old neighborhood. Someone jokes about how dramatic I was as a teenager. Then the story comes out, polished and familiar. They say I wandered off during a block party when I was 14. They say I panicked for no reason. They say I came home on my own and made a big deal out of nothing. They say it like they were there with me the whole time. But my memory feels different in my body. When they talk about that night, my chest tightens. My hands get cold. I feel small, like I am being corrected by people who refuse to listen. I remember being alone. I remember waiting. I remember thinking no one was coming. When I try to say that out loud, my mother gently interrupts. She tells me I am safe now and should not dig up old things. My father avoids my eyes and says memory can be unreliable. My brother laughs and tells me to relax. And my sister does not say anything at all. For a long time I wondered if love meant accepting their version over my own. I wondered if keeping the peace meant staying silent. I even wondered if the truth mattered anymore. What I did not know back then was that the truth was already written down, hidden away, waiting for me to find it. The more my family repeated their version of that night, the more I started to doubt myself. It did not happen all at once. It crept in slowly, like a quiet voice that kept asking if I was the problem. When everyone you trust tells the same story, you start to wonder why yours sounds so different. Every time the topic came up, I tried to explain how it felt instead of arguing about details. I would say things like, I remember being scared, or I remember feeling left behind. But those words never landed. My mother would sigh and shake her head gently, like I was a child clinging to a bad dream. She would say, "You've always had a big imagination." She said it kindly, which somehow made it worse. My father handled it differently. He stayed calm and logical, like he was solving a problem instead of listening to his daughter. He would say memory changes over time, especially when emotions are involved. He told me the brain fills in gaps. He spoke like a man who believed facts mattered, but only when they supported him. My brother Caleb treated it like a joke. At dinners, he would grin and say, "Here we go again," whenever I tried to speak. Once he laughed and said, "You act like we abandoned you or something." Everyone chuckled, and the conversation moved on. I sat there smiling, feeling my face burn, wondering why my pain sounded funny to them. My sister Noelle was the hardest to read. She was younger than me, and whenever I asked her privately what she remembered, she would hesitate. She said things like, "I don't really remember it," or "I was just a kid." But she never said I was wrong. She just looked uncomfortable, like she was holding something she did not want to drop. After those conversations, I would go home and replay everything in my head. I would ask myself the same questions over and over. Why would they lie? Why would I remember it so clearly if it never happened? Why did my body react before my mind even caught up? Some nights I lay awake convinced that something in me was broken. I started reading about memory loss and false memories. I searched for reasons why a person might remember something that did not happen. Stress, trauma, attention. The words blurred together until they all felt like accusations. I told myself maybe I needed to let it go, just like my family wanted. But then there were moments that did not fit their story. Once, during a holiday dinner, My uncle mentioned that night without thinking. He said, "After what happened with Alara, everyone was pretty tense." The room went quiet. My mother quickly changed the subject, and my uncle avoided my eyes for the rest of the night. That silence stayed with me long after the guests left. Another time, I found an old photo album at my parents' house. There were pictures from that summer, but there was a gap where that night should have been. No photos, no jokes written in the margins. Just empty plastic sleeves. When I asked my mother about it, she said we must have lost some pictures. She said it too fast. The tension followed me into everyday life. I flinched when people raised their voices. I struggled to trust my own reactions. I wondered how many other things I had accepted without question, just to keep the peace. Loving my family started to feel like erasing parts of myself. The breaking point came at my grandfather's funeral. Grief lowers defenses, and people say things they normally keep buried. While standing near the coffee table, I overheard two relatives talking quietly. One of them mentioned that night again, this time with a tone that sounded like regret. When they noticed me listening, they stopped mid-sentence. One of them said, "That's not something we talk about," and walked away. That was the moment. Something shifted inside me. I realized this was not about memory anymore. It was about control. It was about deciding which version of the past was allowed to exist. And I was the only one who did not agree to the rewrite. For the first time, I stopped asking myself if I was wrong. Instead, I started asking a different question. What were they so afraid of me remembering? After my grandfather's funeral, I could not shake the feeling that something had been carefully hidden from me. Not misplaced. Not forgotten. Hidden. The way my relatives went quiet that day stayed in my head like a warning I could not ignore. For the first time, I stopped trying to convince myself to let it go. I decided I needed answers, even if I did not like what I found. A few weeks later, my parents asked me to help clean out my grandfather Leon's old house. He had lived there for decades, and the place was full of memories stacked in boxes and drawers. Family photos lined the walls. Old furniture creaked with every step. It felt like a house that still remembered things people did not want to say out loud. While we were sorting through the living room, my mother casually told me not to bother with the storage room near the back. She said it was full of junk and not worth the effort. She said it quickly, without looking at me. That alone made my stomach tighten. I waited until everyone was busy. Then I went back. The storage room smelled like dust and old paper. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling, some labeled, some not. I told myself I was just being curious, that I would take a quick look and leave. But my hands were already moving. Opening boxes, shifting folders, following a pull I could not explain. That was when I found the filing cabinet. It was old and heavy, shoved behind a stack of paint cans. The drawers squeaked loudly when I pulled them open, and I froze, listening for footsteps. When no one came, I kept going. Inside were neatly organized folders, labeled by year in my grandfather's careful handwriting. One folder stopped me cold. It had my name on it, not a nickname. Not a family joke. My full name, written clearly like it mattered. I sat down on the floor before I even opened it. My heart was racing, and for a moment I considered putting it back. Part of me was afraid that, if I saw what was inside, there would be no way to pretend anymore. But I had already spent most of my life pretending. I opened the folder. Inside were papers I did not recognize. A typed incident report from a neighbor. A printed voicemail transcript. A few photographs sealed in a clear sleeve. Everything was dated. Everything pointed to the same night my family insisted was harmless. The report described a young girl left alone near a closed park late in the evening. It mentioned raised voices earlier in the night and concern from nearby residents. My hands shook as I read it line by line, until the words blurred together. The voicemail transcript made my chest ache. It was my mother's voice, frantic and low, asking someone not to call anyone else, asking them to handle it quietly, saying it would be dealt with at home. I felt sick. The photos were last. I almost did not look at them. But when I did, I knew instantly that my memory had been telling the truth all along. There I was, sitting under a streetlight, knees pulled to my chest, face turned away from the camera. The timestamp matched the night perfectly. I was not imagining anything. I was not confused. I was left there. I put everything back in the folder and sat in silence for a long time. I did not cry. I did not feel angry yet. What I felt was clarity, sharp and painful but real. The doubt that had followed me for years finally had somewhere to go. When I left the storage room, my mother looked at me like she knew. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. It was the first time I realized how easy lying had become in our family. That night, I made a decision. I was done carrying this alone. I was done questioning my own mind to protect other people's comfort. I did not know how the truth would land or what it would cost me. But I knew I could not unsee what I had found. For the first time since that night years ago, I felt grounded in my own memory. And I understood that the next step would change everything. I did not confront them right away. I needed time to sit with what I knew. Proof has weight, and once you bring it into the open, there is no putting it back. For days I carried the folder everywhere, hidden in my bag like a secret that finally belonged to me. I kept replaying how they would react. Denial, anger, tears, silence. I was ready for all of it, except how calm I felt. The moment came sooner than I expected. We were gathered at my parents' house for a family dinner. Nothing special. Just one of those evenings where everyone pretends things are fine. The same jokes, the same seating, the same careful avoidance of anything uncomfortable. At some point, my brother mentioned the old neighborhood again. I felt my chest tighten, but this time I did not shrink. I stood up and said, "We need to talk about that night." The table went quiet. My mother smiled nervously and told me this was not the time. My father asked me to sit down. Caleb rolled his eyes and said, "You're really still on this?" I did not argue. I did not explain. I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. One by one, I laid out the papers. No drama. No raised voice. Just evidence. The neighbor's report went first. Then the voicemail transcript. Then the photos. I watched their faces change as they recognized what they were seeing. My father would not touch the papers. He folded his hands and stared at the table. My brother's expression drained of humor. My mother's hands started shaking before she even spoke. She whispered my name like she was afraid of it. "That was never supposed to come out," she said. That sentence landed harder than anything else. I asked them why they lied. I asked them why they let me believe for years that I was unstable. I asked them why no one ever apologized. My voice stayed steady, even though my heart was pounding. My father finally spoke. He said they thought it was better this way. That everyone was overwhelmed that night. That things got out of hand. He said rewriting the story felt easier than facing what actually happened. My mother cried and said she was trying to protect the family. She said if people knew the truth, everything would fall apart. She said she never meant to hurt me. Caleb said nothing for a long time. Then he admitted he remembered more than he ever said. He admitted they were told not to talk about it, that it was handled, that I would forget. I looked at my sister Noelle, who had been silent the entire time. She was crying quietly, staring at the photos. When she finally spoke, she said she remembered being told not to ask questions. She remembered knowing something was wrong, even if she did not understand it. The truth settled over the room. Like heavy air. They did not forget what happened to me. They agreed to remember it differently. I realized then that the story they told was not about me at all. It was about keeping control, about avoiding blame, about protecting a version of themselves they could live with. I told them I was done pretending, done minimizing what happened, done carrying the weight of their choice. I told them I was not asking for permission to remember anymore. No one argued. There was no big apology. No dramatic apology speech. Just quiet faces and broken certainty. The version of the family they had worked so hard to protect cracked right there at the table. As I gathered the papers and put them back into my bag, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because they admitted the truth, but because I no longer needed them to. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what happened that night. And this time, no one could take it away from me. After that night, nothing in my family looked the same. No one said we were cutting ties, but the distance grew quietly. Fewer calls, shorter conversations, long pauses where there used to be noise. The truth did not explode our family. It slowly pulled it apart. For a while, I grieved more than just what happened to me that night. I grieved the family I thought I had. I grieved the idea that love always meant protection. I finally understood that sometimes people protect themselves first, even if it costs someone else their voice. The biggest change happened inside me. I stopped asking my family to confirm my memories. I stopped explaining my feelings to people who had already decided not to hear them. For the first time, I trusted myself without needing permission. A few weeks later, my sister Noelle reached out. She told me she was sorry for staying quiet. She said she was scared back then and did not know how to speak up. That message did not erase the past, but it reminded me that truth still matters. Even when it arrives late, I learned that being the only one who remembers does not mean you are wrong. Sometimes it means you were the one strong enough to hold the truth when others could not. Healing did not come from their apology. It came from believing myself. If this story felt familiar, if you have ever been told your memory was wrong just to keep the peace, you are not alone. Your experience matters. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this, and comment below where you are watching from. Your voice deserves to be heard.